Hey everyone, Chris Bayless here from the Sponsorship Collective. We've been getting the question a lot lately about whether or not we should be using these sponsorship marketplaces or these apps that connect properties to sponsors. And related to that is whether or not we should work with someone who claims to have all of the connections that we're looking for in the sponsorship space. So in today's video, we're going to dive into the idea of the marketplace for sponsors. Check it out. All right, let's talk about the idea of a marketplace for sponsors or an app that connects people to sponsors who are looking to invest. Or, as I said, another version of this is, can I find a person who just knows all the decision makers within companies and they will help me grow my sponsorship program? So, if we think about what's sort of underlying these questions, it's the idea that sponsors are looking for an easy place to review proposals from properties like yours, perhaps, so that they can decide where they want to invest their money. In other words, if I'm a brand looking to invest in sponsorship, the biggest problem I have is finding people to take my money. And so the idea is that an app emerges, a database emerges, basically a marketplace for sponsors emerges that helps these brands who are trying really hard to invest in sponsorship find these hard to find sponsorship opportunities among properties. Another version of this is the idea that there's a person out there who just happens to know all of the decision makers at Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies all over the world, and that those companies are waiting to hear from this person before they invest in their sponsorship, marketing, and advertising plans. Is it just me, or does this sound a little suspect to anybody else? Almost too good to be true, right? Well, there's a reason for that. I mean, if you had access to Fortune 500 CEOs, would you be selling your contacts to strangers in exchange for a couple percentage points on a sponsorship offer? If you did, how long do you think they'd even take your calls for? The idea that companies who spend literally millions of dollars per month on marketing are just waiting for some person or an app or a database to tell them which marketing opportunities to invest in is indeed a false assumption. This is just one of those ideas that sounds good on the surface, but when you dig just a little, it's obvious that this doesn't exist, and there's really no logical reason for it to exist. After all, the biggest challenge that sponsors have is not that they don't know where to invest their money because they simply don't have access to sponsorship properties. It's that they're inundated and overwhelmed with people looking for money, sending them proposals. So this idea of an app, of a marketplace being a convenience for the sponsor really doesn't make any sense. And if it's not a convenience for the sponsor, they're not going to sign up for it. So the idea itself is very unlikely. Sounds too good to be true because it's not true. But in addition to being unlikely, believing in this idea that you can shortcut and just get in front of people if you had the right app or the right connections, etc., actually opens you up to some unscrupulous players in this industry, I'm sad to say. So my team and I get approximately 300 calls per month on our calendar from sponsorship properties, probably just like yours. They're looking for us to help them build attractive sponsorship programs that sponsors would be interested in. And that's exactly what we do. But around 20% of the calls that we take tell us a story, and it's a sad one. In particular, I'm thinking of someone who we spoke to over the course of a year, who I'm going to call Linda. Linda spoke to us and decided that she would rather a shortcut. The idea that an app or a marketplace out there exists, or a database, or someone could just make some introductions. She was sure this was out there in the world, and so she went out looking for it. Well, what she found was someone who was willing to promise that they could deliver on this too good to be true idea. And Linda invested $25,000 out of her own bank account for her startup in exchange for precisely nothing. Now, my team and I are tired of hearing from people who were taken advantage of. It is not a fun conversation to have. They go out into the world 100% certain that if only they had the right introductions or some sort of connecting mechanism where they could send their proposal, they would have their money. The problem is that when you believe this, you will find people willing to sell you this, as Linda did. Now, $25,000 is a painful and expensive lesson learned, no doubt. But worse than that was the 8 months of Linda's time and energy and effort that produced nothing. And after 8 months of making payroll out of her own pocket, 8 months of paying all of her business expenses herself, 8 months of paying out $25,000 to someone who promised a return on investment and didn't deliver, meant that Linda went out of business. And we had to take that call where Linda was talking to us about how she really needs help and now she really needs a magic bullet. This isn't the first call that we've taken in a week, not even in a day, where we hear people who have gone out into the world and purchased these promises based on faulty logic. And as a result, have either paid a lot of money for nothing or have had to cut their business, or in Linda's case, went out of business. Believe me, I get it. I understand why it seems so logical that sponsors would just want to sign up for these apps or these databases, or that they would just have this network of people who would go out and find sponsorship for them. But they don't, because sponsors do not have a shortage of people who want their money. At the core of this thinking is the sentence, all I need is a list of contacts, an introduction to the right person. All I need to know is who is interested in seeing my proposal. When you're starting your sponsorship journey with all I need is some magic bullet, some Hail Mary pass, you really open yourself up to risky opportunities, risky situations, and as I said, unscrupulous players in the industry. Sponsorship is complex and nuanced. All you need is an amazing opportunity, outstanding audience data, a sound prospecting strategy, a great approach to sales and discovery, and great negotiation skills. That's all you need to do sponsorship well. The last thing you need if you don't have those things is an introduction. A really good friend of mine heads up sponsorship for a major brand. And she and I were having breakfast. And while we were having breakfast, I asked her, hey, how many sponsorship proposals do you typically get in a month? And she said, we get 10,000 unsolicited sponsorship proposals every month. We didn't ask for them. We don't want them. We don't read them. So I asked her, would it be more convenient for you if we could put your name out there and let people know that you're interested in seeing more sponsorship proposals? And she said, that would be the absolute worst move that she thinks her company could make. They don't even have an email address, a form, or a physical address on their sponsorship page. In other words, these 10,000 people found them despite the fact that they didn't want to be found. So there was no value at all to her to be part of a marketplace, to be in a database, or to have somebody making introductions to her on a regular basis. So how do they get sponsorship? They determine what their target customer, target audience wants. And then they reach out to potential properties, to potential sponsorship seekers, and have a conversation with them. And they negotiate together a way to engage that audience. In other words, it's not your sponsor's job to be available to you to pitch them. It's your job to prove to the potential sponsors that you have their audience and that you offer value. Sponsors are hard to find because they want to be hard to find, not because there's a lack of app or marketplace or database or person who has all the contacts. If you want to speak to a potential sponsor, you have to do so in their language. You have to be able to prove you have the right audience information. You have to be able to reach out to them in a way that resonates with them. They're not going to make themselves easy to find. This idea that if only you had the right contact, if you only had the right system, if you could only find the place where all the sponsors are hanging out, then you would have $1 million. I think you're letting yourself off the hook. I believe that we all know it's not that simple, and it can't be that simple. Those who are doing incredibly well in sponsorship didn't just buy the right marketplace. They took the right actions and the right steps in order to get sponsorship. Sponsorship seems really hard because it's really hard. Here's how to get in front of sponsors. First, get to know your audience and get to know them well. 25 plus data points on your audience, minimum requirement to be doing sponsorship. Then reach out to the brands that you know your audience is buying. How do you know they're buying those brands? Because you ask them in a survey and you know exactly what brands they prefer and exactly what purchases they're planning to make. Then you want to build your outreach strategy, which involves emailing, yes, networking events, yes, and cold calling. Then you want to be incredibly persistent. Remember, your sponsors don't want to be found. It's not their job to be available to you. So you have to be persistent. And then when you finally get a sponsor to respond, you're going to do discovery and have a good meeting with them and learn all about them. And then together, you're going to negotiate a cool, amazing, experiential marketing sponsorship opportunity. Did you notice that in my list of how to get sponsors, at no point did I say you need to have sales material or an email address to e-blast that sales material to? You don't need a proposal. You don't need sales material. You don't need a one-pager. What you need is audience data and an outreach strategy that works, the persistence to go through that outreach strategy, and then you have to be good at discovery, not sales, discovery. So an extension of this idea of a marketplace or an app or a database of sponsors is that I'm just going to hire somebody who's going to work purely on commission, only if they bring something in, and they're going to do all the work for me. They've got all the connections. It's a win-win, right? Absolutely not. Again, this is not how it works in the industry. If you want to outsource to someone in the sponsorship industry to run your sponsorship for you, you should expect to pay a large monthly retainer every single month, often with a minimum 3, 6, or 8-month buy-in. Then you should expect to pay at least 15%, as much as 30% on all the sponsorship that they bring in. And in all likelihood, they're going to want to be the exclusive listing. In other words, no one else can sell sponsorship for you, often not even you. Then you should expect it to take 6 to 12 months to see results. And for the person you hire, if they even agree to work with you, to be very, very skeptical of your offer. Why? Because those who do this type of work get literally thousands of pitches from properties just like yours saying, I've got $1 million opportunity. I'm willing to pay you a couple percentage if you promise to represent me. Everyone I know who does this work charges a major monthly retainer, takes a sizable percentage, turn down 99% of the people who approach them, and prefer proven opportunities. In other words, if this is your first time to market, if you've only been in market for 1 or 2 years, the likelihood that you're going to find someone willing to represent your sponsorship opportunity is incredibly small. And the likelihood that they just know all the sponsors, also small. They're going to do all the things that I've described in this video to get sponsorship. They're just going to do it on your behalf. They're not going to open a magical Rolodex. They're not going to reach out to all of the sponsors who are just waiting to invest wherever they tell them. They're going to put in the work in order to represent your opportunity. But the good news is the best person to sell sponsorship on your behalf is you. Because the person who cares the most wins. Outsourcing a major revenue strategy, a major piece of revenue for your sponsorship opportunity, is incredibly risky and rarely recommended. You should be mastering this for your business, for your opportunity, and not exporting it to someone and hoping they do a good job. That's what Linda did, and Linda lost her business. I'm sorry for all the tough love in this video, but honestly, my team and I are so tired of hearing these stories. It's heartbreaking to hear from people who had a great idea, a great opportunity. They believed something that wasn't true, and someone took advantage of that. Remember, hard things are hard. There is no silver bullet. There is no knight in shining armor. The best place, the best person to sell sponsorship for your shop is your shop. And it's probably you. I understand that sponsorship may be challenging, it may be hard. In fact, it's all of those things, but it's a skill that you can master. And frankly, it's a skill you must master if you have a property or an opportunity that could generate major 6 or 7 figures in sponsorship. So if you enjoyed this video and you want us to keep putting out free content just like this, I want you to do a couple things for me, please. Give me a thumbs up, hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, and down below in the comments, drop your biggest takeaway. And if you've had a negative experience with one of these types of sponsorship opportunities, marketplace, or those who are promising that they can open doors and connect you with people, if you've had a negative experience and you want to share it down below, that would be great as well. And remember, the person who cares the most wins. Good luck out there.